Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with Weekly Comic Book Roundup. We made it through this week's Marvel books, so now let's move on to this week's DC titles, starting with Batman number 105. Where we left off, Ghostmaker had managed to defeat Batman, Harley Quinn, and Clown Hunter, and had them imprisoned within Arkham Asylum. Clown Hunter's restraints were Clown Hunter wasn't restrained, and it turned out there were weapons around, and Harley finally learned just why it is that Clown Hunter is such a mad-on for her. It's not just because she used to run with the Joker, but rather she was there the night the Joker killed his parents. So, the issue begins with a flashback to Argentina. Young Bruce Wayne is opting to return to Gotham. Ghostmaker's trying to get him to stay with him, to work together. Abandon being Bruce Wayne, abandon his quest for to stop a crime that's already happened. And they make their deal. Ghostmaker stays out of Gotham. Batman stays out of any city that Ghostmaker is out of camp in. In the present, Clown Hunter has Harley at his mercy and is about to take her head off with one of the swords that was left by Ghostmaker. Batman gets loose, throws a batarang to Harley, enabling her to undo her own restraints. And she has a talk with Clown Hunter. Going through everything she went through that led to her becoming going from Dr. Harleen Quinzel to Harley Quinn. And she actually straight up apologizes to him. Telling him that she's sorry his parents died and she's sorry that she had any kind of hand in it. She doesn't remember his parents, but if Batman says she was there, then she was there. And she tries to get him to abandon his quest, because you've got your whole life ahead of you, okay? I'm sorry that something I was involved in messed up your life so much, but you still got your life ahead of you. You can do something different. She said the reason that she, ran with the Joker for so long was that desire to feel strong, and she wanted to be the one with all the power. She wanted to be the one people were afraid of, and now she's going to deal with the consequences of that for her entire life. She'll always be Harley Quinn and trying her damnedest to make the most of it. And so she's going to try to save as many people she tried to hurt back in the day, and she wants to be a better version of her. Then she tells Bao that if he still wants to kill her, he can, because she deserves it. When Batman attempts to intervene after she says this, she simply says, "Stand back, it's his choice." Clown storms off with tears in his eyes decides not to kill Harley after all. Batman goes after him, trying to help him, but he tells him to leave him alone. But Harley asks if he's gonna make sure the kid ends up all right, and Batman does say he'll do everything in his power. After she leaves, Ghostmaker arrives, and the two have their fight. And Bruce takes the Ghostmaker gets first blood on Batman, and then Batman surprises him, drops his sword, and says that he doesn't want to fight Ghostmaker. They've been fighting too long. And Ghostmaker decides that he'll leave Gotham in the morning and they'll stick to the old arrangement. Says that it's too bad because he was hoping that Batman would come at him with one of his cars. Apparently, Ghostmaker's always been jealous of the Batmobiles. Batman acts like he's building a new one. All wheels on the ground, built for speed maneuver in the streets. Not a tank. And then Batman asks Ghostmaker to stay in Gotham, help him make it better. Because he's getting older. The city's getting younger, and he doesn't have the resources he used to have, or the allies within law enforcement and city government he could use to help. Ghostmaker says he's not going to stop telling Batman what he's doing wrong, which, Batman is glad for, because since Alfred passed, he doesn't have enough of that in his life. Ghostmaker also adds he's not wearing a bat on his chest, which, Batman wouldn't ask him to. Explaining that his only rule as a Ghostmaker is not to kill in Gotham City. Adding it makes the job much harder, but he understands if Ghostmaker's not willing to risk it. And apparently, Spoiler, Orphan, and Nightwing are all waiting outside, just waiting for the opportunity to beat Ghostmaker half to death and to save Batman. Apparently, Batman already knew they were there and gave them the order to stand back. Then invites Ghostmaker to come say hello to them. Apparently, though, Ghostmaker's just got an alert from Oracle. The Circus of the Strange just hijacked the Gotham Symphony Orchestra. And so, the two go off to save the orchestra, with Ghostmaker betting Batman he can save the orchestra faster than Batman can. Batman taking the bet, and Ghostmaker adding that Ghostmaker is now richer than Batman, which Batman says that's good because it means that Ghostmaker is buying dinner afterwards since he doesn't have a butler anymore. And that is where the issue ends. This will be our last issue of Batman for the next 2 months, at least Batman proper, as we will be getting January and February will be taken up by the Future State arc from DC. I think Future State's is largely comprised of ideas from the discarded 5G concept that was announced, I want to say earlier this year or last year. But I'm not certain on that. But in March, things go back to normal. I think everything's restarting, basically. We're getting kind of a couple months. Death Metal's going to end beginning of next month. And then we get a couple months with a Future State. And then everything starts anew. And I'll actually be doing a video discussing what we learned from the March solicits. So anyways, moving on, though, to Batman's Grave, number 12. Final issue of the miniseries by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch. Where we left off, Scorn had been pretty much defeated on an emotional level, was on the run. He begins with him being tracked by one of the bat drones. And he says into his cell phone, he's lost everyone. They've abandoned him everyone except for someone, the other person on the other end of the phone, who will know what to do if they see Batman. And goes set off some explosives, and nothing happens. A small circle of explosives that go off nearby, allowing for Batmobile to come out. Apparently, Batman disabled the charges. And the only ones that were left are a group right by Scorn. So when they go off, they drop him underneath the street. Him and Batman duke it out. Batman constantly insulting Scorn's father. Until finally he's defeated. Though Batman does take his fair share of lumps. When all is said and done, the GCPD are waiting for Scorn. And Batman offers to help him. Scorn simply says, "I'm you. Let me help now," before putting the gun he's holding on the side of his head and pulling the trigger. Batman looks down at the body and then walks away, goes back into the Batmobile, tells Alfred he's coming home, and is promptly hit by, the Batmobile itself is promptly hit by a garbage truck. Batman's able to get free of the garbage truck, which is being driven by a member of the Scorn Army. It's heading towards Wayne Manor. However, he's losing blood and does lose consciousness, going off the road, ending up at Wayne Manor in a wrecked Batmobile. Outside Wayne Manor in a wrecked Batmobile, where he takes off his mask and collapses in front of the family graves, collapsing right between the graves of his mother Martha and the grave of his own grave. And we see there's a rather jagged piece of shrapnel sticking out of his side. And that is where the miniseries ends. Bring us to our next book, Dark Knight's Death Metal number 6. Where we left off, Darkest Knight had been making new dark worlds with which to cultivate dark knights and whatnot from, until the heroes and the villains gathered together and got the earth out of sync, and so now they could no longer be more. He couldn't make more. So the issue is narrated by Sergeant Rock, somewhat prayers. And turns out that Batman's got the remains of the physical body of the Batman Who Laughs from when it was killed by Diana, and he uses his Black Lantern ring to resurrect that. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman, along with her army of Lobos, are going through the passage to the Forge of Worlds. And the fear of the Batman Who Laughs taking form comes after all of them. Meanwhile, Darkest Knight himself is facing off against Perpetua, and seems to be winning. Though she explains that, she's the only thing keeping her race from discovering this multiverse. If she dies, then the hands will come to it, see what's been done, and end all of them. To which Darkest Knight simply says, "Promise?" On Earth, the assembled heroes and villains take on the Darkest Knight's armies. Uh, Back in the passage to the Forge of Worlds, however, the Lobo clones are being devoured by something in the darkness, and Diana, making her way through, drops Luther's journal. She comes out in the Forge of Worlds and finds Darkseid, along with baby Mobius. Darkseid explains that without even the journal would have made little difference. The forge dims by the moment. The creations of the one who laughs have no real souls, no hopes, no fears. They think only of winning. In moments when your friends die, the fires will go dark. But she says there has to be a way to win. Back with Darkest Night Perpetua, he's beaten her. And he explains that just for fun, he saved one last surprise for her. Fragments of the Source Wall. She explains all she wanted to do was evolve mankind, make them strong. And he explains he knows what she wanted. All the gods fail to understand humans at their most fundamental level. Beings like them, they see humanity, see our dark instincts, and they try to save us. The mistake all of them make is thinking they want to be saved rather than unleashed. The big secret, the truth, is that in the end, it's the gods who want to be saved from mankind. And so he tells her to die knowing that they look at her all at that. He says, so die knowing this. We look at you, all you who beg to our better angels. And we laugh as he destroys the portion of the Source Wall that he re-imprisoned her in, and also her. After that, something's happened. The heroes note something's happening. Maybe they won. But Jarro, Batman, Swamp Thing, Abigail Arcane, they all know something isn't right. As the Darkest Night appears, and he states that in the time it took him to cheer, he realigned the Earth, finished creating all his planets, all his armies, and has brought forth his favorite soldiers, the ones he's been saving for their last moments, to say hello. Got the Robin King, we've got Swamp Thing, got Murder Machine, Devastator, Red Death, Merciless. Various others. So Superman says, gather your family, fight alongside them. They go out together. Back in the Forge, Wonder Woman is honestly having trouble accepting that this is the end. And then she thinks Darkseid tries to convince her that that's just how it is, But she disagrees and says that it's only when we fear the truth that evil arises. To know that all history and every human life is part of one story is to know that we all matter, that everything we do matters, that truth connects us because it is love and it binds us together. Then she sobs and finds. Looks at her lasso and says, a machine that forces us to see the truth. And she knows what to do. as she dips her lasso into the forge. And then basically the various leaders of the family, of the various groups, say basically the same thing. All right, everyone, this is it. We fight as one army, one planet, one universe. We see the Bat family, and by Bat family I mean the Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, Orphan, Red Hood, Robin, Red Robin, as well as the Bat villains. Aquaman, Mira, Aqualad, Batphomet, Black Manta, Ocean Master, the Lanterns. Surprised though Sinestro's not with them. Superman, Superboy, Steel, Supergirl, Lex, Bizarro, Superboy, Parasite, Doomsday, Cyborg Superboy Prime, and a few others. Clark says goodbye to Lois. And then some regular Joes show up as well. And something begins to hit everyone. Joker being the first note saying, "Do you guys feel something funny?" To which Nightwing states that for once he agrees with the Joker. While Wonder Woman says, "One universe. She can feel it all, our history, all the stories, everything we've done, good, bad, all of it. Becoming one history, one story, one truth. She can feel it working." Then Superman states he remembers it all. And suddenly, from the ground, Diana erupts, covered in gold, wielding the chainsaw of truth, and states, "One who laughs. You want to fight someone? I'm right here." And to be perfectly honest, that's actually a really awesome last page. Ignore the Ginny Hex ad. I'm not necessarily going to ignore it, but you know. And that is where the issue ends, leaving us one more issue left in the series. Which brings us to our next book, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, the issue begins with Tempest Fugonaut, once again explaining Crisis on Infinite Earths. For those unaware, Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Anti-Monitor showed up, was consuming realities. The remaining heroes banded together, fought him off. Supergirl and Barry Allen both died, with Supergirl being killed by the Anti-Monitor to protect her cousin, and Barry Allen running himself to death, basically to destroy the Anti-Monitor's machine. And when all was said and done, all that remained was one Earth, New Earth. Well, in this, what ends up happening is it's not. And New Earth was largely based off of Earth 1, which was the Silver Age, the home Earth of the Justice League, rather than the Justice Society. However, in the Dark Multiverse, New Earth was based largely off of Earth 2, and so right off the bat, Surtur attacks and kills the Justice League, who don't have their own Superman. The Earth 1 Superman went off to his reward in the pocket dimension alongside the Earth 1 Lois Lane and Earth Prime Superboy. And so Surtur basically, destroying the world. The All-Star Squadron show up, and he promptly kills a ton of them. Killing the Spectre even. And then the heroes go to regroup and declare themselves a Justice Society of Earth as opposed to Justice Society of America. Um, There's reflecting on dead teammates. Starman and Flash come up with something possible. Basically, doing to Sturter what in Crisis Barry did to the Anti-Monitor. Alan Scott tries to reconnect with his son Obsidian, and we really never talked too much. Yeah, the Justice Society of Earth attack once again. Johnny Thunderbolt gets a bit of an upgrade, courtesy of the Thunderbolt, basically making armor around him. Flash starts doing his thing, running around Sturter, basically trying to make him consume himself. And Sturter manages to swing his sword just right and cut Flash in half. But yeah. Superman fights Sturter, knocking chunks out of him. And finally, Green Lantern will stop. And they said, hey, okay, fine. So you're just going to move on to another world. What? What if, instead of destroying this world and moving on, you just moved on and you completely left this planet alone forever? Asking them simply, what if you could destroy world after world, just not this one? And so, Alan Scott becomes the Herald of Galactus. I mean, Surtur. The Dread Lantern. No, really, he's it's a darker take on the friggin' Silver Surfer's origin, basically. The Silver Surfer sacrificed offered himself up as Herald of Galactus to save the planet, his home planet of Zenn-La. Well, yeah. And while that New Earth thrived with new heroes and whatnot, it's at the cost of various others. And all because of an unholy oath. And I shall shed my light for fiery evil, for death alone survives the light of the Dread Lantern. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our final book of the week. Which is kind of a disappointment in the way of the Tales of the Dark Multiverse. But, yeah. Rorschach, number 3. Where we left off, the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate was being investigated, and the investigator was now was on his way back out west. Had stopped in was stopping in Hannah, Wyoming. It was an important town for, if I remember correctly, the hometown of the candidate. Our two killers, however, are there. That's in the beginning of the issue. Laura, the younger of the two, telling her would-be Rorschach about some of the history of the town. The 2 mine explosions. And eventually her father became the caretaker of the graveyard that was there to, for all the dead miners. Which is where he taught Laura how to shoot. It's funny, he was preparing her for when the squids came back. Now, for those unaware, in the comic book version of Watchmen, it's not implied that Doctor Manhattan killed everyone, killed massive chunks of the world, but rather that a giant squid monster suddenly appeared and psychically killed everyone. And there was a squid monster. So it was created by Ozymandias and dropped there itself. And one night, her dad took her downstairs to show her a room full of guns. And I mean, and he explains that after telling, because he told her mom when she was, that hey, yeah, this little kid of ours, she's gonna be special. She's gonna save the world. Well, her mom laughed, and well, shortly after that, her dad killed her mom. Squid mind control. Over the years, her father was training a group called the Miners' Militia, a group of dads from Hannah and some of the other nearby towns. He'd been a DI in the army after he'd been overseas, and he would help them get trained for the coming war with squids. Trained by the Graves, no one ever came there. She got invited along, and she tended to outdo most of the dads. We see various training, knife fighting, razor wire, or not razor wire, but tripwires, explosives, learning the land, more shooting, taking someone down. Some more humiliating training exercises. Shooting a bottle of beer off of one of the guy's heads when she was 12. And the investigator steps outside the diner while the waitress is outside smoking. Somebody just needs some fresh air. Then one day, Laura got called over by her dad. So he was reading a comic book. Not about pirates, about something real. Masked men. Citizen and the Unthinker, they were fighting. Over and over in different cities, different times, the same fight. Sometimes one was winning, sometimes the other. Arguing about what's evil and what ain't. He was reading their argument, wondering which side he was on. He realized, clear as a bell, that the squids had taken his brain. Just like they took Laura's mother's. It's unfortunate. He thought to kill himself, but he could not complete the thought of the action. The squid is powerful and controls his hand. So, he has his daughter to do what he cannot. Wrote a note so that people wouldn't think it's you. Don't think they'll look too close at the details. No one cares about them out there. It's an advantage of theirs. Explains that once she's done, put the gun in his hand, drive back to Aunt Shirley, act off into a step, and she'll call the police. Don't tell about the squids, so anyone knows, puts you in danger. So, she does it. And it looks like it was only done fairly recently before her little cosplay adventure, or cosplay assassination attempt, as her and her Rorschach come to look upon her handiwork. She explains that her dad said that the mine killing in 1903 wasn't all that bad. What was bad is that they kept the mine open. 5 years later, it went off again. Times had it wrong. 18 men got trapped. They sent another 41 after him to help him, to save him. They went off again and killed all 59 of them. They're buried there too. And so she said that meant that her dad said that meant there was a pattern to the thing. Like he was looking for the patterns. Once there's a pattern, where there's a pattern, there's intention. And intention, that's the bad part of it. That's the evidence. She said, as the squid is here, always been here. And they got to stop it. And now our investigators reading her journal and actually beginning to see them. Though, it's more like imagining a conversation in your head with someone. As he found her journal, because she'd hid it to be found, not by Aunt Sheila or the cops, but by someone good enough to find it, someone kind enough to help. And he asked what it means, and then Rorschach says, "You're the detective. What do you see?" He shuts the book and asks for the check. And opts to head on out. And that's where the issue ends. And that's it for this week's roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.